I sometimes call it metacognition, which is that you can look at yourself objectively and give yourself a feedback where you are, where you're heading. In my mind, I always wish that I could have a coach, if I'm a professional athlete, tell me, okay, right there, you made a mistake. Can you try to correct right there and do it? But in the real life, I have to be my own coach. I have to be the one who make the judgmental call. But in order to do that, I really, really have to have a deep understanding of who I am, what I like, what I can do,
Hard work, that's what they say. Hard work, I earn my pay. Hard work, do it every day.
Well, welcome once again to another Work Ethic podcast. And I'm sitting here today with Jeeyoon Kim, who's an award-winning concert pianist, the host of the Journey Through Classical Piano podcast, and also newly an author of Whenever You're Ready, which is, I've been reading through, is just such an incredible book. I'm going to just pass it to you now to really introduce yourself, kind of flesh out your own, kind of who you are a little bit for everybody. And then we'll just kind of roll from there.
Hi, everyone. I'm concert pianist Jeeyoon Kim. People refer me as a gateway drug to classical music. I guess I accomplished that kind of title by doing everything in that, bringing the bridge between audience and performer me through the beauty of classical music, by creating this podcast talking about classical music. And now I have a YouTube. I'm a mainly pianist, but I was also teacher. And now I added another element in my work, which is author. And my goal for this book was really show a glimpse of behind the scene of concert pianist and demystifying the talent code everybody's talking about to me, like, you're so talented. So I wanted to talk about that. And everything I do behind the scene is not only daily work, but a lot of mind training, self-discipline, how to connect with people, how to take care of your body and mind. So I really wanted to show that side of it. And so that when you walk to your stage of life, maybe this tool might be helpful. And also that's goal of this book has been so that you can be closer to a concert pianist who is me, so that maybe you're interested in coming to a classical concert or listen to classical music. And that's my kind of like gateway drug to classical music through my book as well.
Man, I love it. And so for those listening, I've had the chance to kind of read through most of this book, and honestly, I've been blown away by it. And I do want to jump into by the way, the subtitle on the book is How to Compose the Life of Your Dreams. And as I read through it, and as I read through it, I couldn't help but think, like, yeah, while the context is, kind of the piano and practice and composing and whatever, the book itself really is kind of like honestly, I was like, this is so perfect fit for the work ethic, where it's just like habits and discipline. And there's so much rich stuff in here about and so for whatever you're doing, whatever your goals are, I couldn't recommend this book more. I already have so many people I want to get a copy for. It's so well done. It's fantastic. And I really want to dig into it. But before we do, I'd like to hear, okay, let me ask you this question. Like, as far back as you're able to remember, think about like the word work, or the concept of work, and how it took on meaning in your own life. Like, what's your earliest memory maybe of work? Things you worked at or were doing or were hard or whatever?
It's interesting you asked that, because I started my piano when I was 4, and I have no recollection of thinking, oh, piano is going to be my work. And that was just joy. That was my passion. It's my love. But it's like around 11 or 12, I was very aware I have to make a conscious choice. I actually have to commit to this, not just as love and passion, but actually do the work at it exercise my love every day. If you put it the work, in the perspective, I practice 4 to 5 hours every single day since I was 4 without fail much of a day, that I'm 41 years old. That's about 37 years of nonstop working, right?
Yeah,
Quote, quote.
that's right.
And so for me, work is exercising your love. And is that always fun and kind of rosy? No, but I know internally what is my passion, and I know what's my mission. And I always think my work has to be combined with play plus meaning. Am I having fun? Did I help someone in the process? Then isn't that meaning of success? Isn't that wonderful that I'm doing this work, quote, and I actually do contribute to the society, and at the same time exercising my passion. So I always kind of bring back to every time I face the challenges that can be financial or some other reasons, then I know if I put myself in that track, do I love this? Yes. Am I helping someone through this work? Yes. If that's just so, if I keep going, if I persevere, money follows. People understand with time, and that is, a definition of work for me.
Wow. So say a little bit about this. You're the combining with play and meaning, and I think you fleshed the meaning out a little bit, and even there's so many like terms of phrase there, the exercise of love or whatever. But talk a little bit about play then.
I think everybody has this inner child who wants to play. That is called creativity. And I think a lot of people would think that, oh, so-and-so is so creative, I'm not really creative, or as if someone has that ingredients more than the other. But I do believe everybody has the inner child, wants to play. And that means that you actually make mistake and just follow whatever that could be. And I think that can be exercised. And the more I follow my inner child, that I feel like I'm more connected to myself, and I can find the meaning, but I don't worry about it, that the inner child doesn't come with the judgmental side. And I think that is where you can exercise just a daily basis. You might want to find going to work in the different route, and even if it takes longer, maybe, or, you find this recipe that you never tried, just always kind of curiosity in your mind and follow that curiosity every day, kind of exercise of it. Then that small voice is actually, I call it as a passion, or what you are interested in, that might actually come alive to inside of you. Then you know how to listen to that voice. For me, when I started the podcast, I was actually of viewee of the one podcast, and I was thinking like, I always loved radio when I grew up, like something about the acoustic, like, the voice only. It's very like, what to say? It's not digital. Somehow it's like black and white kind of photography kind of thing. So I really enjoyed it. And afterwards, a small voice came to my mind. What if I made a podcast? And I was kind of laughing. Yeah, that's right. I don't even know what is a podcast and what is it takes. And then the small voice kept coming back to me. But then, one day I was realizing that small voice is my inner child that wants to play. And that at that point, I actually committed after like weeks of just hearing that voice. I'm going to make a fun out of it. I'm going to make a playground out of this podcast. I'm going to call it as, Journey Through Classical Piano. That sounds really good. No, I need the artwork. I need artwork for this. And then everything becomes like a play. And, now I have a solid fan for the podcast, but the idea was really like, it's a game, of a life game. And I think, did I think about, will I succeed? No, but did I make mistake? Yes. When I laugh about my mistake? Yes. I think it is really, we needed to let ourselves just go out there, making mistake, laugh, if something doesn't go well as you hoped, and keep playing. And I think also the creativity or those kind of like inner child comes out when you do nothing, when you daydream, when you just walk without listening anything, just sit down at the bench in the park, just do nothing and people watching. And then sometimes then you may be able to listen to your inner voice, inner child. Hey, why don't we just try X, Y, and Z? So I think we have to allow ourselves just be blank and not actually stimulate by any input, the iPhone or TV, computer, anything. Just do daydream and do, I think people are really way more creative when they have only dirts to play, in 1,000 years ago,
Right.
Something like that. They didn't have a fancy toy, anything. So I think our humans really need the void of space to really listen to yourself. And the goal is actually for you to connect with your own inner soul that already has a meaning and purpose and fun and joy, all the life it's asking for. And I think that if you believe that, you have to cultivate on your own, not by taking class or not by someone else telling you, but you paying attention to the inner voice and just be light about it, have fun.
Okay. So I got to say, I think that, I think that's spot on, like correct. And I have like a real, like that resonates and a real value for kind of like the void of space. Right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And yet I want to acknowledge that maybe for a lot of people listening that like I get the impression there's something really terrifying about that, right? And you go, yeah, well, you connect with your inner soul, and like, and maybe for someone who's well acquainted with that and well accustomed to that, and even sees like a child but I know, and even for myself, there are times where there are very scary things that emerge as well out of the silence. And when you paused, when you said we need the void of space, but like just at the void, I was like, I started, what I thought of was, I think it's Nietzsche that said, like, if you stare into the void long enough, it begins to stare back into you. But I wanted you to like speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, I think I actually talk deeply about that in one chapter in the book about the monster in our heads.
Yeah.
That monster.
Love that title.
The monster, because I am always on spotlight, like, and performed like in front of 1,000 people, and I cannot please everybody, but I'm out there very vulnerable. And, there is actually professional job that called critic that will actually criticize my work afterwards.
What a job.
The newspaper, they will write it about how they criticize. So I'm always has been a spotlight, a vulnerable, having that negative voice from others. But the more importantly, I hear negative voice from myself, and which really, interestingly, that because I'm a spotlight, those negative monsters that actually awaken so much in those kind of vulnerable situations during my performance, right before my performance, or right after my performance. So I actually had to deal with this monster all the time. And I thought that was, I had a bigger monster than anyone else. But in fact, everybody has a monster. And I realized, more and more I give a concert, then like, okay, this monster is not going away. Is that me? Is it someone else? What is it? So I actually had to analyze. What is this voice is telling me? What is it based on? Is it based on my childhood? Is it based on someone else actually told me in the past? Is this my partner told me? Is this my friends told me, or parents in the past? I had to analyze this voice. And then luckily we do have angels in our head. We can create it, that positive voice in our head, and actually try to defend this negative voice. I always call it as a 5-to-1 ratio. And when you have like, let's say I have this one voice say, oh my gosh, people not gonna like this concert. Then immediately I write it down. I actually write it down, the negative voice too. And then I write it down 5 defense angel, like my lawyer angel will say, you know, you love playing piano. Just express what you do. People gonna love it, you know, and you're gonna have amazing time. This is such a beautiful thing, isn't it? Whatever that is, I combat this negative voice as 1 to 5, 1 to 7, what doesn't matter, but a lot of it like out of ratio, because if we let it, monster will grow much quicker than the angel. So I use this power of writing, because this is the power that we can give our thought a clothing. If we don't give a thought of clothing, it just lives very abstract sense in your head. But as soon as you actually write it down, it actually is something that you can deal with. So when you hear this fear or some kind of negative voice in you about whatever you do, try to write it down, and how silly and ridiculous that is. Just objectively look at it, and then try to combat this very sentence with very positive, like, fake it until make it. And just kind of like that, just write it. Even though you don't believe that positive sentence, I would still write it. And I also visualize. Let's say if I had a negative thought about doing a podcast, it's going to be negative. No, in my head, I visualize this podcast is people going to love it. They're going to be someone actually kind of moved by it, change their life, some shape or form. I visualize that, it's like my fantasy of visualization. But for my concert, I actually visualize when I wake up, when I'm going to eat breakfast, how I feel, the best scenario possible up to the point that I go off the stage. So the 2 things that I do to combat my monster in my head, that is the power of writing, journaling. And so in that, I also write it as self-affirmation sentences, daily journaling paired with visualization. And when we have this fear, it is often when we're looking at other people when we think about other people's view. But I always tell myself and my students as well, is that when you give a concert or do something or create a project, don't think what others can perceive this particular thing. The arrow is coming from inside out. When you think that your beauty or your passion is overflowing cup, and then maybe people might receive the benefit out of it, but you're not really, arrow is not pointing towards you. Well, how big people gonna like it? Will they love it? Will they hate it? That's arrow is coming towards you. But when you think everything you do is from inside out, and you're not really, doesn't matter what their people do, think or say. Right. And as long as you think that kind of outward, you expression of your life, expression of who you are, then I think their monster will tame. I always say the monster will never go away, but we can tame it, so that when those monsters start to awake and start to acting up, we know how to deal with it. And I think that's really important, to prepare for this monster come arise all the time, so then it's not like you're become a victim of it, but whether like, there's monster, hey, how are you? So it's been a while, huh? And then you deal with it, rather than like, just vague abstract things happening in your head.
Man, it's so much there. It's so good. So like, it's funny, it's amazing to me, like, honestly, as I read through this, because I'm like, it's actually a really good psychology book, right? Like and I wonder, I'm like, I was like, are you like a counselor or something? There's so much here that's just like, this is very good mental hygiene kind of stuff. Right. And I love the monster, even the way you call it. So I use the same word, and because I'm very familiar with that monster, right? And I it's funny, I don't, well, as you say, well, I write it down, and you're like, well, it loses like some power. There's like a transformation and what's interesting to that, like, there's like, in certain religious circles, there's ideas of demons that need to be named. Like you
Oh,
name the
right,
thing.
right. Mhm.
And then in like 12 steps in recovery programs, like it begins with an acknowledgement of a problem, but there's like a and honestly, I think even like if anyone has an experience of like being ill and not knowing what's wrong, it's like it could be anything, and that's horrifying. And then if the doctor can diagnose it, it may still be bad news,
Right.
but it's specific bad news, like
Right.
it's now named or handleable
Right.
or addressable. And then I have like it's interesting, I'll just share my own discipline or habit around this. I just recognized that I was doing it. It wasn't like, oh, I need to do this, but like I hold a lot of things that I read dear. Like I read something like, and it won't even be like a book, although there's a lot of books I really value, but it'll be like a phrase, a line, like an idea, right? And I hold on to them. And then I realized that the way that the realization, it came to me when I was like, oh, I recognize that I'm doing this as like a habit with that monster, is I manage the monster with mantras. So so here's an example. Like there's I think his name is Rudyard Kipling. There's this really famous poem, If, that I love and memorized when I was young. And I'm so grateful that someone encouraged me to do that. And there's just one line in it: if you can wait and not be tired by waiting. Now that doesn't mean much because the whole poem is, if you could do this, if you could do this, if you could do this. And then the end is like, yours is the earth and everything that's in it, and which is more, you'll be a man, my son. That's like the final line of the poem. But because I know the point of the poem, I found myself like in line, let's say at the grocery store, impatiently, like thinking about like the irritation of waiting, the impatience, or looking at the line that I should have been in over there, the slow cashier. And I realized like, oh, the way that I dealt with that, and it's like I didn't even realize I was doing it, is I would start saying, if you can wait and not be tired by waiting, if you can wait and not be tired by waiting. And somehow it took my attention to this like positive tool. And I started realizing that was something that I had been doing for a long time.
But that's actually, you're talking about, it's actually almost like in the track of meditation, the mantras, and I think that really, it's in the meditation, there's different kind of practices they do. And then the one is that you say the mantra over and over again. And I think the same idea that for me, meditation is so that I want on stage or off stage in my life, I want mental clarity. So then when monster is acting up or whatever the thought comes in, I'm not a victim of that particular emotion, but I catch it. Oh, I'm frustrated. Before I react about it. So then I think the daily, again, practice of meditation, although I'm not actually guru or any way, but everything I wrote in the book is something that, I picked up on it, and it really works. And then I realized, in the grooves actually talked about it in thousand years. And there, this is like, just like a classical music is about the raw emotion of human. Like there is a love in 1,000 years ago, there's a love now. There's anger in 2,000 ago, there's anger here. Our tendency as a human are repeatedly always there. And I think the struggles that humans have, whether we have this all technology or not, I think we're dealing with this kind of similar kind of issues because our species as a human. And I think these tools that like a meditation or even writing, or visualization, all these things are, I think that it's not like this is a trend. But it's actually has been proven that to help. That's and again, right. I can't tell anybody like, because I meditate, this will help 20% better than what I can never numerically mention all of these tools will help in certain kind of specific way. But I know because I do everything possible to make my life a little more positive, I'm sure something will actually have a compound effect over time, that I'm more calmer, more peaceful, and more happier, more content.
Yeah, I mean, it creates like, you're right. It creates like a virtuous cycle. It kind of builds on itself, and they become habitual, right? They become things that really are, that's your mind kind of goes to those things. And what's interesting is you go, and I realize gurus have been saying this, but what's interesting is like, so from a pianist to a spiritual guru to an athlete, like that what's really interesting to me is that the people that really shine in all of these different places, there's like this meta lesson
right.
that it's like, oh, it turns out you're saying the same thing that you're saying.
Right.
Sometimes it's a little different, but it's, you know,
Yeah.
and it they map together in
Right.
so many
So
ways, like what it takes to excel at something.
right. I think you actually, more and more you read or you meet those people in the top of the field, you realize you be able to probably see the core line of the truth of what it might help for, or, you know, to find out how to connect with yourself and how to really live life, I don't know, more healthy way, right? And so there, I think my goal was this book was like, in my mind is when I first wrote the book, like started to idea, like everybody probably talked about this, and it is true they did. But when you listen to or talk some issues with your friend, even though guru is there and talk about this for 1,000 years, just because your friend said, you know, I actually had the similar issue, but I tried this, it really worked. And then at that moment, you're like, really? Oh, let me try that, you know? So I wanted this book to be friendly. It's like having a coffee with me and talk about life. And maybe that kind of like encouraging and warmth and compassionate approach that they may pick up on one or two tools that they might work. And actually it's actually more effective because there's no like heaviness in the voice.
Are you familiar with Jocko Willink?
Mm-mm.
No. Okay. Well, so there's a you'd like him. But so he's a military dude. Like he's just a commando, but he's
what is that? What is that book name?
Well, he has several. The Discipline Equals Freedom is the one of the books I'm thinking of. He has a book called Extreme Ownership, which is another. He's got a handful of books out. He does a lot of like leadership. He's got a podcast. I think it's just called the Jocko Podcast. Well, what's interesting to me, so okay, just I can paint a picture for you, like just muscular meathead. Like, I mean, I think he even refers to himself as like a knuckle dragger. Like he's like a fighter commando, like everything you could imagine, right? In terms of like that caricature. And he is highly regimented, discipline. I mean, really, really, really like a caricature of discipline to the point of when it's almost like it almost seems robotic, right? Like it's super, but he's a great guy, such a good dude, whatever. Okay. So it's funny. I was telling a friend about you the other day as I was reading this, and I was like, I'm really excited to talk to her. And they said, well, like, what's it like? And this friend knows not knows personally, but like read Jocko's work. And I said, well, Matt, you know, like Jocko, right? I was like, so it's like Jocko, but like feminine and kind and friendly and sweet. And like, it's not like Jocko at all. And yet, but like at the core level of the like discipline. I mean, I could even just say to like, why don't you react to the title of that book? Discipline Equals Freedom. Like, does that sound about right? That sounds
on point.
I think I could find that in here actually. Yeah, right.
On point. Yes.
Yeah, and I was just so blown away by it. So, okay, I have another question. You said something earlier about when you started your podcast, and you were like, I forget exactly how you said it, but like, I didn't think like, will I succeed or something like that. And what stood out to me about that sentence is I just wanted to, because I try to ask everybody this actually that I talk to, how would you define success?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. I thought about this success for my whole life because I am in this piano field. As much as it's beautiful and all, there's severe competition. I always has been competition. Since I play piano, there's always someone who's play faster, mistake free. It's like athletes in some ways, although the music can't be judged in that way numerically, but there's a competitions, and you know, all this society creates this numerical standards. And that was my struggle always, that, you know, if you get in this competition, then you are better than the other. Or if you get in this school, or if you get a job, or if you get an offer to play this concert, is that means that you are, because you're better than the other person. How can you judge someone moved by your performance? And then they really affect their life positively afterwards in some ways that you can never know, the butterfly effect. And how can you define that? So I actually have to really deal with, like, because we are living in the society, I cannot escape from how many followers do you have? How many concerts do you have a year? What kind of, everything, even for podcasts, how many listeners do you have? So those are things that always like from outside of view of what I do. And I have to find, for me, what is a success? So for me, it's interesting. There's one concert that I gave. It was in Chicago. There was like, there's really modest place there. There's monks, actually. There's like a 10 or 20 different monks, and piano was not fancy Steinway, concert grand, but it was like upright little piano. And in my mind, like, oh no, this is gonna be disaster. But then when I came there, but I did like the humble environment. And I gave a concert. That was one of the most memorable concert I ever gave. Just the way it felt like I just went back to 300 years ago, and where there's monks and there's a peace, there's a joy, there's a connection. Afterwards, the next concert, which was much bigger and bigger venue, the presenter's like, what is this? Is this some monastery? Like, yeah, I played there last week. And like, let's not mention this in our bio because it doesn't really prove you anything, And in my mind, oh, wow. And I understood where he's coming from. But in my mind, will I play certain concert hall? Will I change that? Am I successful? The success, if I put success to other people's view, or if I create a success in a numeric way, how many, how much, when, all of those things, then that's never ends. Always I will be a slave of that, because if I have play there, then I want to play more people, or all this, like more and more and more. So then I really found my inner peace by, I want my daily life to be success. My daily life, a daily day. If I die tomorrow, I want my today to be most successful day. What is that gonna be? Is that gonna be today I have to play in this most gorgeous concert hall? No, I want to play piano. I want to be, talking to my friend. I want to have that peaceful, and I want to, first, I want to be able to connect in that day. I want to express what I do through music, which I already know that's my passion. And I want to do something meaningful for me. And in the process, I help others. And I want to create this, my inner peace, so that it's not shaken by other external forces, whether that's judgmental voice from others or the expectation or the whatever that is. So then at the end of the day, I'm smiling like, that was a beautiful day. That was a successful day for me. And in that day, it consists of me walking, or somehow some kind of working out, or some kind of movement. So then I know what makes me as a whole person, and I want to continue doing that every single day. And who can judge that to me? Are you successful? I can confidently say I am very successful. Yeah. I tell you what, I am very successful, because my daily day is the way I want to design my life. And that's something that it's not about really like do anything, but it's more about the status of my mind. It's a peaceful. And in order to get there, I have to do a lot of work around it to get there. So if I'm doing today well, then means I'm doing my life well.
Man, that's so beautiful. You so several times you've talked a lot about like the external other people. That makes perfect sense, especially in like your world where it's like the observer, and like that battle that takes place, which I believe doing that, putting yourself in vulnerability from 4, 6, 11 has, I would say, it's really obvious what that is shaped in you. And I think you've done a really good job of communicating it in your book. There's a story you told that comes to mind when you keep talking about like the vantage point of other people. There's a story you told about playing, maybe it was in school, you're behind a curtain. Would you mind sharing that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, people would think because I am performing and I'm a professional pianist that I always was like prodigy. I wish. I don't think, I mean, luckily my parents were like, they pay attention to me, but they actually at the same time, they didn't. It's in some ways like, that's your life. If you want to keep doing whatever you want to, we support what you love. That whether that is whatever that is, so it was always on me. And I went to art high school, which is very severe, like Juilliard, the most competitive school in America in undergrad program. But now this is the art high school, and my mind is not developed yet. So there's the competition it feels even more severe. And we play like same pieces all at the same time. And you can directly say, oh, I played that 30 minutes, but she played 2 minutes and 50 seconds. That means she plays faster, all this ridiculous kind of thing. And so in art high school, there's always piano exams. So after exam, it's funny that think about it, but afterwards, they put the ranking of where you are on the wall on the next week or so, and there's no hiding point. Everybody knows where you stand. One from 100 kind of thing.
Wow.
So, but in this exam is always like open, like you can see the judge who is other like piano teachers or something, and you play. And I just changed my teacher at the time, and I remember the day. I'm not sure what I'm going to become. I don't know. Am I going to be pianist or not? But I know I love piano. What if I do like absolute best? If I did like, I don't know, like I'm going to really try my hardest work and see what happens. So for this particular exam, I remember I was just every day, even when I eat breakfast, I was thinking like, how can I create this music even differently? How, all I think about music basically for that or 6 months period. That particular exam, I wasn't always top 3. There's always top 3 that we can see like, oh yeah, so-and-so. Oh yeah, so-and-so. I wasn't horrible, but it wasn't like top 3. No, it wasn't me. And so it was like very familiar names, 3, 1, and like we know that so-and-so is always good. Like, oh yeah. And that particular exam, it was open curtain. I mean, the closed curtain for that. But they somehow thought, what if we experiment with the closed curtain? So they don't know who is playing.
They don't know who's playing.
Yeah. They're basically
interesting.
They just judging it by hearing it. Somehow that kind of, it was interesting. Everybody was curious about how it's going to different, Yeah. So all of a sudden those judges did not see who's playing. And in my mind, I only think about this music for 6 months. I was playing and sleeping and playing, eating, but it's playing in this music, So when I walked to this stage, I felt like to this piano exam, and I feel like there's nothing more I could done differently because that was absolute my best. So when I walked, even before play the first note, I felt so free. I feel like there's no judgment. There's no worry about mistake. I did my absolute best, whatever that is. So I sat down and I was like out of body experience. I'm playing, but I am not the one playing. There was a sense of joy, sense of freedom that I felt like, wow. And then I could tell there's someone behind the curtain. There's another human is there, but their existence made this music making even more special. It was something like we're meeting in the 4th dimension. And when I finished it, I was smiling. I didn't think I would be any top 3 or anything. I just felt, this is great. This is what I want. and I walked, and then there's a next student is walking in for another exam, like, good luck,
You guys were in a
And-
different headspace.
and good luck, and then a week later, we all have this cleaning time, like we all mopping the floor, and in the high school. And then my friend was running towards me, and Jeeyoon, did you look at the bulletin board? And like, why? And then she said, you are in the top 3. And I was like, really? And in my mind, wow. That connection of hard work combined with that sense of freedom, combined with connection I felt with that invisible person in behind the curtain, that's a feeling that I want to somehow always have somehow in my life. But that somehow like electricity was ding and connected. And I'm so grateful for that particular experience that I had, because now I long for that experience every time I give a concert. But I know unless I give absolute best, that freedom will not come. It's harder for me to let go. And there's some idea of letting go combined with the give everything I have. And, as if again, this is like, I would be fine dying on that day just because I know I did my best, as if this is my last performance. I did that kind of intensity. So I long for that freedom, and I know I can only create that.
Man, the story stuck with me. And actually, as you were talking, I found it, and it's in the chapter called Winner's Mindset. And by the way, you retelling it as I'm looking, I'm like, wow, do you have this book memorized? Obviously, the book came out of your ability to tell these stories. And yeah, a freedom that only comes after giving everything I have up to that point. I've highlighted a couple things, and it's what I've noticed. I was like, oh, they're right in this section too. Like there's a bunch of stuff, but like right at this line really stood out to me. I have to say I'm addicted to it, the intensity of working hard and feeling free. I just love that line. But then on the next page, and I think you just said this, like pushing yourself to that point, like, and there's this line on the next page that says, I believe something significant inside us changes when we try to reach beyond the best version of ourselves. And the image of like the ecstatic reaching beyond is a powerful one. In fact, one that to me, it's like if someone were to ask me, what does the word faith mean? A lot of people go, oh, it's like a belief, or like it's like a weird kind of knowledge or something. And I'm like, I actually don't think that's true. I mean, we interchange them in language a lot, but I actually think it is the mind, the emotion, the body reaching beyond what it's capable of. That's in my mind. I'm like, that's the exercise of faith. Now you're not using that word. I'm trying to apply it, but it triggered that in me because I'm like, no, that's actually how I define that word. Right. And I'm just curious about that reaching beyond, and well, go ahead if you want to respond to that, because I have another question on the heels of that, but go for it.
I think it is my life. I'm not sure. I want to ask every single people actually about that too, because I feel like I always felt moving forward when I felt like I'm hitting the dead end here, at that point, I do have a choice. I have a choice that just turn around, because which feels easier actually than move forward. And because it's kind of like, it doesn't sound like I could do it, or it sounds like a lot of work. And also feels like there's a lot of waste of time and energy already assuming it's not going to work. But that's a point that I have to make conscious choice to be completely vulnerable for failure. And that's a point that's a limit that I can see that it's a kind of like my absolute limit. And believe that the failure will be just fine. Failure will teach me something through this.
Right.
So I try to push it as hardest as possible by making extra effort, more of the mind-wise. I really feel like I'm an athlete, and just like creating my world record time, that doesn't really happen. That means that I'm aiming for that, aiming beyond myself. And I always felt like me yesterday is my competition. How can I be better about me yesterday? I can always settle back now. I've done something good work, good. Life is good. But then I still have to go beyond myself, which is the hardest. If we compare to someone else, it's easier. It's easier to compare with others because but harder for me is compare with my own limit. And whenever I think about that and push it, then what comes afterwards always opens door that I never thought it would open for me. So then my life was like, oh, wow, I didn't think that was possible. But then, whoa, when I even did my doctorate degree, I had no idea I would get in anywhere, but my job was practicing, working hard, and apply. And will I think about failure? Yes, but I still, applied the places I thought I could get in, plus all of this. So I always try to think that there's a part that I should be doing, and there's something that life force will carry me if I do my work. And they combine these together. That's a faith,
Yeah, that's it.
That I feel like if I do absolute best of effort, then somehow life unlocks something for me.
Yep.
And then I can see wow, that opportunity I never saw before. And then I move forward to another direction and life is just full of adventures. But then in adventure, I have to create so much courage and vulnerable, knowing that this may not work, but know that this is my absolute best still, then there's no regret. If the failure feels sweet because I tried, that didn't work, but I learned something from that. And so I become stronger version of me, and I keep reaching beyond me. And playing piano, there's no end. So in my mind, I'm in the profession that 95 years old cellist will say, I'm practicing this morning because I feel like I'm making progress. Yeah. I'm in that kind of world. So that maybe mindset is always more familiar to me than other field. But at the same time, I have to think that when I play now or versus when I play 70, I hope that my version of that particular piece when I'm 70 will be so much better. Because the way I pushed my life, the things that I learned from failure, and I don't want to ever have to go back.
So if you look into some of the research on what's been called flow state, there's one of the triggers of flow state is actually something that is just beyond your capacity, right? Because there's kind of a threat that if you graph it, there's they say there's a line between boredom and anxiety, right? So if it's if you play the first song you ever learned and you're yeah, it's boring. This is easy to do, whatever. Whereas the anxiety piece is maybe, I don't know, probably applies in this case as well. But I know you surf, right? And so surfing is the illustrate, because I used to surf a little bit. I wasn't very good, but I'm in Florida, right? And so in Florida on the West Coast, there's nothing. On the East Coast, there's low waves. And I did that a lot. And I really liked it, got good at it, whatever. And then I traveled. I was in Costa Rica and I was like, hey, I want to go surfing here. And so we went to this place that tourists go. And I was like, Florida's better than this. This is sad little stupid waves. You almost need a longboard to ride these little 2-foot waves. And I was complaining. And I went to some locals and I said, hey, where's real surfing? And they're like, oh, okay. And they gave me a spot. And so I got in a taxi and I went to this, what was effectively a surfing village. And I remember getting out at the road. I couldn't see the ocean, but I could hear it just exploding. I didn't even go out there. I went to this shop and I rented a board and I went out and there's this black sand volcano beach or whatever. And I've never been somewhere. I've never seen waves like this. And it took me all day to paddle out just to get out. Right. Like I spent like that was pushing myself beyond what I'm capable of. And when I got out there, I was like, oh my, like something changed in me. I pushed through, but then I tried to drop in on one.
Oh,
and I realized like there is a sweet spot and this is far beyond the sweet spot. I was rolled and slammed so much that I was like, it's over. It's a wrap. And I just kind of came to like washing on shore, basically. Like I just, and by the way, I'm an idiot. Like I had no business trying to do that. Right. But like, I bring that up because to me, that's the perfect memory in my mind to go, you need to reach beyond what you're capable of. And also there is a intelligent place to do that. And so I wanted to ask you about that balance, but then also your own, because honestly, reading your work and like your the way you treat your day-to-day life, even as you say it here, is like I hear something like a perpetual flow state. And like I'm genuinely curious about your experience with flow. And that kind of zone or in the pocket or where there's all these ways people refer to that. But talk to us about that a little bit.
I do feel like every day, feel like it's a flow state. Like I absolutely love waking up and do my yoga I absolutely love teaching, my student practicing and then and I'm actually loving this time talking with you. And I think it is all about one thing at a time and know how to focus. That comes with the one thing for sure, that when I talking to you, I'm only thinking talking to you. I'm not thinking, oh, what I have to do later or anything like that. My mind and body, everything right now is present time. When I surf, I'm right there. That's one thing, just one thing at a time, the bullseye eye, like that kind of focus on one thing, that's something can develop. And I think that's kind of default, of the flow state. But I think what is really important, I emphasize over and over again in my book, is that you develop your own inner teacher. I sometimes call it metacognition, which is that you can look at yourself objectively and give yourself a feedback, where you are, where you're heading. In my mind, I always wish that I could have a coach, if I'm a professional athlete, tell me, okay, right there, you made a mistake. Can you try to correct right there and do it? But in the real life, I have to be my own coach. I have to be the one who make the judgmental call. But in order to do that, I really, really have to have a deep understanding of who I am, what I like, what I can do. It's not like someone else can tell you like, oh, that's easy. No, that's them telling me that's easy. For me, it might not be easy, So, but it's kind of like be able to give an objective feedback. Very it's not judgmental attached either. Again, it's just like, oh, I know I can do that. Like there's some piece of music that I wouldn't do it, just because I know that's too big for my hands, even though it's one of the most beautiful piece of music, and I wouldn't do it because I know that's like, no, why bother? That's not for me. I know that, I wouldn't just jump into this piece because I'm gonna prove myself I can. No, I wouldn't be stupid about it. But that's over time, really understanding who I am, what am I capable, and I've also understanding where I am now. Am I actually procrastinating here, or do I need to actually rest? There's a fine point that, am I pushing it, you can do it, or actually I'm being stupid, So then there is really always the balance of life. It's art of itself, whether that's a work and rest balance, whether that's a level of difficulties. So in whatever I do, I seek for expert, has been always seeking expert, so that when I doing my piano right now. I don't have teacher because I've been doing 37 years, but it's a time for me to just develop my own teacher. But I had a teacher for longest time until like my late 20s. That's almost 25 years of someone professional telling me like, no, Jeeyoon, just to turn this way, turn that way, so without, again, judgmental voice, but just give honest feedback. When I started surf, first thing I did was finding female professional surf coach. That's, people said, surfing is just for fun. You just learn by going out, having fun. People will tell you here and there, you're giving you tips and that, like, no, I want someone to tell me what I'm doing wrong. And also giving me, actually watch me from, because now I can't really know. I don't have that metacognition feedback myself, because I don't know what's surfing either,
That's right.
but I needed to coach someone to tell me. So then eventually, probably I would be able to catch what is surfing is about in a year or two, but that's way too slow for me. I don't want to waste my time, So again, every field, like, so my students, the piano students come along, and there are some, pianists out there, amateur or whoever, just do it for fun. That's totally fine. But when you have professional coach or teacher or mentor or someone in the field, if I were talking, when I started the podcast, I actually talked to someone who already done podcasting world. They say something like random stuff, but then for me it was like, oh my gosh, what's it? What did you say? What kind of interface? What? Like just little things. They don't even think about what they're thinking about telling me, but they're throwing the wisdom out there like that I don't have any perspective with. So I think it's really important we develop our own inner teacher, but we can't develop inner teacher without really learning about it. Humble learning attitude, learner's mindset. And learner's mindset is, even if you're an expert, even if I'm an expert in classical music, I still, like someone says, like, wow, that's interesting. Tell me more about it. I want to learn. That combined with knowing what I'm good at, what I'm not good at. And then I know I want to push this one a little bit further. I think I should push it. Or sometimes I feel like, Jeeyoon, just take it easy. That's fine. So that like a gentle coach that can give you or change their head whenever needed, that versatile self-coach, that inner self that you developed is one of the strongest tools that you can have. So then when you're going about daily day, again, that's not monster or dictator or general tell you, go out and work out, do this, then it's more like, oh, how can I make today great? What could I do? Make it great. Again, the game out of it, curiosity of how today's going to play out, what you like to do, you have to be gentle first, I think, but that the inner voice guiding you, and let that guide you. And, I think that is really the key of being flow. And one of my students once told me like, you always seems like having so much fun in your life. Why is that? Like, is it being a piano teacher? It's really fun. I'm like, I don't know. Like, it doesn't matter what you do. I think, it happened to be my passion. It happened to be, but I created my own version of what is good for me. I could have easily worked at the professor in university. But I know I would hate that, because I know I would not like teaching students who's not passionate about learning. That I have to ended up teaching piano 101 for every undergrad students every year. That would not
has to be there.
Right. And a lot of meetings. So I ditched that idea, my mom's dream would have been me becoming a professor at a reputable university. That would be meaning of success to her. But to me, that would not give me a flow state, because I'm not in control. I have another soldier into this play. I could make it into, if I know myself, I would love to work in a university. Has been my dream. Then I could have a flow state in being a university professor. But for me, I know what I would like and what would, so that I create my own version of my perfect Jeeyoon world as a being CEO of Jeeyoon's world. And I create, because I create my day, it's fun. It's flow.
I love it. It's funny. This has become a bit of a canned response. People are like, "Hey, how are you?" And I'm good, whatever. And this is a little related to like you talking about as you were talking about doing your best. I actually, so that's my answer. I'm doing my best. And what's funny is most people reply to that, well, that's all you can do. and I think that's not how I meant it. I mean, I'm like really trying to do my best here. And then what's interesting is sometimes saying that, which is now just a canned response for me, sometimes saying it reminds me, because whether it's the angel or the monster, I don't know, but it goes, "Are you?"
That's right.
Are you doing your best? And I'm like, you know what? Like, but it's been a really helpful, like, it's like a mantra, right? But it's triggered by that question, just because I'm like, oh, nobody, people just want to move on. They say, oh, I'm good. Okay, good to see you, whatever. And so I'm like, but I wanted something genuine to respond with. And that's become kind of part of that for me but you're right. Like we with whatever it is that we pull ourselves into, it's like to give it or to choose something that we can throw ourselves into.
Right. Yeah. I think that when you said, are you doing your best? That's something that I struggled more in the past, that you could practice 1 more hour, but are you? But I noticed myself like, I should, but I don't want to right now. In finding out my own battle within, and then create this again gentle self, and telling myself that you're doing great. This is like a marathon of life marathon, And if I think this one is like, I love that. Even I said in the book, like, I do love the ratio of the, Christianity ratio of 6 days and 7-day Sabbath, or 85% you push, 15% complete, a turn off. So that when I push 85%, 1 day of the week, or 15%, I'm just do nothing. I'm just like, I'm unplug. That means I don't do it, and or sometimes I need a more ratio of rest. That's fine. But I think when I fully rest, that during that rest, I know what my rest is. That rest may not mean just watching, shows on the Netflix for binge watching. It could be sometimes, but most of times that's really doing nothing, or just hang out with friends, or something that I can focusing on that rest completely, not multitasking. And when I do that, I go back to that train and just work at it again. But if I don't do it, if I don't unplug myself, then it's easy for me to drain and burn out, which is also another danger of, this journey of life.
Yeah. So it's a couple things in there. So one is like, you're like, well, when I practiced this long, and it's like, you could do another hour or whatever, and that kind of decision or battle that goes on. I just, cause I like the way it sounds. It turns out I have a lot of these, whereas like, I would say like, don't shit on yourself, but like, but like, I'm like, look, like that there's something going on. Like, you should be better at this. You should do that or whatever. And it's like, there's something about that thing that's going on that I'm like, I actually like, I should do what I set out to do. Right. I want to, like you said, I get up in the morning, I visualize the plan, and I kind of execute those things that I've decided to do. I want to follow through on those decisions, but when it's like somewhere out of nowhere, like you should do this, you should do that. And like, because it tries to draw us into, I don't know, guilt or shame or something like that, and yet, but it's interesting how you brought that up with like the work and rest. Cause that's another thing I wanted to ask you about. Because you said, sometimes I wonder, like that's a tough decision sometimes when you're like, I want to give this everything I have and I'm tired. And the idea of like, because sometimes it might be procrastination and sometimes I might really need to rest. And like, sometimes that's not crystal clear to me. So back to this stood out to me from that Jocko book that I was telling you about. So the Discipline Equals Freedom, that's like what he calls like a field manual. So it's less like reads like a book, and it's like point, like it's very like brief and just has these like points. But this was on physical training. So this was on a section on the book on like he lifts weights like crazy and works out really hard. And so he's like, sometimes your body just, it's like you really need to rest. And he's like, but so he is a little closer to the commander dictator voice, right? Like that he really is. I'd love to hear your thoughts on him. If you can look him up, or even you can listen to him read through some of these. His voice is also monstrous. But he said, if I wake up in the morning and I'm like, cause he gets up like super early and then he goes straight to working out or whatever. And he's like, when I'm like, I really just want to go to, I just want to stay in bed, or I don't want to get up. The deal that he made with himself, like when it wasn't the planned rest, he's like, so you've like the 6 days, 1 day off is like Sabbath is a set day, right? It's a set period of time. So it's not a decision made on the fly out of your emotions. It's like, no, it's scheduled and it's coming.
Yeah.
But he's like, when my body is like, hey, no, like today we need to like, so he's like, this is the deal I made with myself. And I'd be curious what you think about this. And then I want to hear you talk a little bit about the work and rest stuff. So the deal he made is, I'll do it tomorrow. So he's like, you need a day off sooner. And he's like, okay, I'll take tomorrow off.
Oh, I see.
He's like, yeah, you can have it tomorrow. Like you don't get out of it because of how you feel right now. So you do it one more time and tomorrow you'll take off if you still feel that way. And like, I thought that was an interesting trick.
Yes. I think there's one thing that is James Clear about the habit, that he was also talking about giving a rewards afterwards. So if you do this work, after that, you can watch this show, or after doing this, then you will, so that was really interesting psychology. And I like that. I sometimes use it, but I think what I really want to point it out, that even that Jocko guy is talking about really is the habit forming, And so then if I actually have to think about when I'm going to practice piano, forget it. I don't think I can accomplish anything. I just know that after breakfast, I will practice. And that's no question. And regardless how I feel, I sit down. And I think a lot of times doing the work consistently, it's much easier than doing the work sporadically. So a lot of people will say that you have to create a system in your daily day that you just kind of glide through it to the point that you don't even think about you're doing. You just have somehow just, one thing to the other. I think there's a point that you may not have enough sleep. So if you're not sleeping enough for 7 to 8 hours, 7 to 9 window, that means you actually body needs to sleep. I need to sleep. I know that. So I tried not to push as much as possible in the morning if I could, so that, my body, but I hate alarm. So when I wake up and I feel like this is 6:30 and I wake up like very cleanly at 7, that's the time I wake up, So I don't really give that kind of push in the morning because I know that my body needed that sleep. But I know what I would do first thing in the morning, though. I make that decision right before I go to bed. When I wake up tomorrow, when my eyes just open, then I will actually directly stretch for 10 minutes. Or I make that decision before I go to sleep. And I think so then I don't think about it. That's already planned. So that versus that I wake up and then like, okay, what is happening today? You know, all of whatever the things happening.
It's like going to the grocery store hungry without a list, right? Let's come home with Cheetos.
Right. But if I make a decision of first thing what I'm going to do, then if I'm doing already that particular work, that day starts, you know, already get started, you know. So I think that's really important for me to, and that then the work and rest balance kind of thing is that, you know, we have to know what, again, the defined rest for yourself that, you know, could really mean that, you know, we need to step away from your working environment. You just go outside or doing completely different, but that you give yourself a complete unplug. What could that be? What could that be? And really knowing that, again, understanding yourself is the tool that you can have. What kind of things that you enjoy outside of work? What kind of things that gives you that feeling of rest? You know, you have to have all the tools that you know and do those things, you know. And when you feel like when my students show up and not playing well, I ask, what did you eat last week? How long did you sleep? Did you work out? All the baseline questions: move, eat, sleep. That's if anything is actually there's nothing work, something crack in that, then inevitably it's gonna have some effect in your work, which inevitably you feel cranky, inevitably you feel like something is off. So then I like religiously try to keep this balance of whatever moving, workout, whatever I do, and eating habit, or to, you know, as much as possible. Again, there's some like generals and gentle self has to play out about our eating habit, but also sleeping. So that then once that is in the right place, then I can really playing around of working versus rest. I'm not going to interfere this whole working and rest if I have to interfere with these three major ingredients of life. So that I always think myself like, oh, I'm not doing well, and turn out that I didn't sleep well last night. Oh, duh. You know, then I give myself like, oh, I know why I feel this way. I need to sleep better tonight, or, you know, something like I know, like there's MRI, I can run it to myself, like you know. So I think that's really, really important for everybody.
So when you were talking about the habit formation and the suggestion of the reward after, and honestly, like sometimes the reward is I did it, right? Like it's just like for me, I'm like, man, I did it. I did that thing. And yet, and you know, or it could be whatever, some supplementary type reward. But the idea of work and rest, one of the things that's always been really, it's an interesting idea to me. Something I think a lot about, and like maybe a little differently than other people. It might be semantics, but people talk about like work-life balance. You're using work rest, which makes I like this better, because when you talk about work life, I hate that it separates my life from my work. I'm not a fan of that. And so I tend to use like integration, the idea of integration, like, but like when I think, if I ask myself genuinely, like there's a lot of restful things you can do, things that are, but if I genuinely ask myself, what is the best rest? And I go, the best rest emerges, like it grows out of hard work. Like when I used to be a tile installer, I like floor tile, and I love that kind of work. Well, I like physical, like I love doing construction, and often that's stuff I do on the weekends to rest. Like I've been laying pavers over the last few weekends, and I like doing that kind of thing. But I would love to like stand back and look at the work that I did. Like I finished it and then see it, right? But like there's nothing like the rest that follows. Like the rest is like a reward. And I've often wondered how that comes out of hard and meaningful work. And how, when you think about, you know, you said, well, sometimes you choose the easy path or something. And I think about like, you know, I do see others. It's not as a judgment, but it's just an observation. It seems like there might be a connection between let's say, work without meaning
Mm,
and not hard work. So like
mhm.
lackadaisical work that isn't done, that isn't meaningful, and restlessness.
Right.
Like existential restlessness.
Mhm.
Right. And for me, I'm like, man, there's some way in which there's this real natural rhythm, because that rest sharpens you
Right.
for the work. And there's like,
Yeah.
it's almost part of the work. Right.
Right. Right. Yeah. No, I really do like that. I think, everybody could give your work a meaning that is meaningful to you,
Mhm.
so that I could recommend everybody has a mission statement, whatever you
Yep.
do, even if you're, I don't know, like, I don't know, security guy
Sure.
to a building, then your amazing important role in the security in the building, and then like, I am person who protect this building, and I
Mhm.
do my best to serve these people,
Yep.
whatever that
That's right.
is, that I think then you really like do your work, and afterwards like, oh, I did my work.
That's it.
Good job. And then go whatever you do afterwards, and kind of, it was so sweet. That for me, the sweetest rest, as you said, is also when I pushed through some project that was like, oh, this is so difficult and so
Yeah.
difficult. And then when it's actually finished, in the next day, I feel like I'm in the like a free bird. Like,
Yeah.
doesn't matter what I do. It's just like, oh my gosh, it's just so sweet, But if I didn't push through that project and did my hard work, that day probably would be same old. I wouldn't have that freedom and the joy that comes afterwards, And it doesn't necessarily have to be work related either. I think it can be your hobby, you're
Yeah.
building something. And then again, that's what I'm talking about, that there's an inner child that you want to come out and play, that doesn't have to be work related, and that you really love. It can be your hobby, and you just learn how to ballroom dancing, whatever, and then like you really learn some steps, and then you be able to finish that steps, and like something that that you put yourself into, and you love it, and
It's interesting as you throw those words around, like it doesn't have to be work related, play, learning, hobby. The reality that the thing that stands out to me is that they all kind of come together in when properly aligned, right? Like, were you referring to like, well, work was like playful. It was something that I love to do. It was the thing that I enjoyed, that I'm learning, I'm growing, and you're right. Like, but even a hobby, like if I want to learn ballroom dancing, it's like, well, that's going to take work. Or when you said, man, I went to go surfing, and they're like, surfing's fun. And you're like, yeah, I got a teacher. And I gotta figure this out, because you approach it like, I want to learn, I want to grow, I want to push myself.
Right.
And it isn't work like vocation, like as in this is my profession. But like, and that's part of even like the, let's say the hypothesis or the thesis of this show in general is going, man, like work is integrated into almost all that we do, right? You got to work to have a healthy relationship with yourself and with other people. You got to work to learn a skill, working at your hobbies or the things that you love. And in some way, like it's a way to recognize that there's something like discipline and sacrifice in every endeavor, including maybe even our rest.
Yeah, I think, sometimes, and not sometimes, I think everybody goes through those times that you hate that work, but that teach you that, oh, I don't like that work. That's important information, by the way,
It
because I once went to school, and because I really wanted to know how to teach kids. Like 4 years old, I can teach like all the advanced piano repertoire, Chopin, Beethoven, but how can I not teach 4 years old, just simple CD, E, And I went back to school and tried to learn. And there was a program that the certificate of you become a certified to teach group of 4 years old. So that I went through this program, and without knowing, because I didn't know how it's gonna, but I just was genuinely curious. So I put ourselves there, and this was like a semester kind of training. And then I was put out into like a intern kind of things, went to the public school, the kindergartner for teach this music group, music classes for 24 years old. And as you could imagine, afterwards, I knew that's not for me. But I had to do that for 3 years. I had to do that because I was committed to that work. And I in my mind, I have to really verify, is this is not for me, this is for me or not, you know? But in those 3 years, every time I came out of that class, my energy was drained. In that nothing is coming back to me, but more out. So then I realized, okay, this is not for me. I can wait. I can wait to get out of this work, particular work, so that what is better suited to me. But I'm glad I went through this. It's not like I did one weekend quit. I didn't. I stayed through it for 2 years. Yeah. In some ways, at that time, people were telling me that, you know, if that time asked me like, do you love your job? And I would not, I'm not sure, like that's actually pretty difficult, but I'm learning something. I would think that I'm an apprentice. They're learning something, learning the most about myself. Yeah. But I stick with it for 2 years. And I'm not saying that whatever you do, and a lot of times people just complain about your work without thinking, with thinking that you cannot do anything about it. Yeah. Because you have to make money. You just need to make a baseline, you know, financial thing, whatever the excuses are. I believe that, yes, there's a times that you may have to, I call just, you know, those jobs that you may hate. Right. That's fine. That's a learning experience in your life. But I think it's important for you to think beyond that work. Okay, because this doesn't suit me, and I'm not happy with this work, I'm going to do my best and learn as much as possible through this experience. But soon I want to venture it out and do something else that better suited for me. And that can be, you know, after work that you venture out, what could be possibility, you know, like you can keep trying to find the better suited rather than complain like, oh, I hate that. I hate this job. I hate this job, but I have to make money. I feel like, I'm not sure, honestly, did you really ask yourself, is this really nothing else you could do? But can you really try to do anything, even though it doesn't bring a money? But if that is really what you like to do, it's better suited to your personality and your strength. If you don't have a strength, maybe going back somewhere to learn something, some skills might be another step, you know. Yep. But as soon as you feel like you don't have a control, that's depressing. That's right. But as soon as you feel like I'm going to make my life into the direction that I would be happy, then you're more in control in your life.
I mean, by the way, if you're listening to this, because I know so many people that are in that headspace. And I mean, I just like what Jeeyoon just said is so important, because it's absolutely right. Like the people talk like they're trapped. And it's a way of not recognizing your own power. And what you're saying is like, even if you have to stay there for a time, but you start to make a plan to go, I'm going to make a plan, or like, I'm going to do this a little bit after work to like begin to build something or find something or look into something, or even like floating things out there, rather just creating some breathing space. Cause you're right. Like just acknowledging that you have self-determination in that thing is a complete a shift of mind state that is so important. And I just like, it's just music to my ears as you were saying that. And I'm going to probably clip that out and go around to people all over the place. Be like, I need you to listen to this. I need you to listen to this. Like, cause it's such a, and by the way, you're way kinder than I am. Right. So like cause I'm like, stop complaining and do something. What is wrong? Like, I can't, don't talk to me about it. Then if you're not going to do something, don't talk to me about it. Like, I don't want to, I can control, this is what I can control in this situation. I can't control you complaining. I can control me listening, and I'm not going to listen to it anymore. But like, and I'm not the nicest about that, because it's so crazy to me, but but it's a gift to see that, right? Because it is a real existentially difficult place for people to be.
I
And
know.
just the way that you say that, it's just like, yes, 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 yes. And
Mhm.
it's the first step for everybody is the hardest step
Yeah.
in just about every endeavor.
Yeah, I think so. I think another thing is that you're expecting someone else to recognize you. You expect someone else will give you that job. You expect that someone will give that position when you apply. And the thing is that, just to giving you example of this classical music, you know how many pianist friends that I have or musician friends that all like felt like, oh my gosh, so and so should be famous, world famous now. But what they're doing now, I don't know what they're doing now. I mean, where are they? There's like one of a million that will persevere and go through because this is field and you're waiting for agent to knock on your door and I will give you a concert to play in this concert. The reality it's not. Nobody would knock on your door and say, look, I will make you famous. Or, oh my gosh, you're so talented. The thing is, everyone is talented. Everyone is talented. In my world, every single like this 20 years old prodigy should be famous if I'm only thinking the skill of what they're just playing that particular piece. But it's not, the world is not black and white like that. So you can't even define someone is talented or not talented just like that. Life is so much more complicated than you define someone has it or you don't. So I believe it has to come from that you have it already. Let's assume that everybody has it. Everybody has your own talent. Everybody has a special thing that you have to find that niche, that particular place that you meant to do in your life. And that they may be actually not existed yet. So that means you have to create on your own. Like at the end of it, that job is very generic. Not many people would fit in that job description. Then it's much happier you create that particular job. But just believe me, every work has this dark side. It's not every work, and no sweet work that you think, wow, how wonderful that would be. Oh my God, so-and-so makes this much money. Oh, so-and-so seems like traveling all over the world. Doesn't matter that what you see the other person has, but just know that they have also very much of a dark side of that. Whatever they do, maybe they don't have a time. Maybe they really hate whatever they do. Doesn't matter. Just understand every work has the pain aspect of it underneath. If you think that, you see on my Carnegie Hall concert, like, oh my gosh, I wish that I could be a pianist like her. You didn't see me emailing 1,000 presenters every single day, saying no, receiving no 1,000 times, and also, practicing in lifelong hours of work. All of this, like, discouraging words from others, myself, or critics. Nobody can give you a like, oh wow, that looks awfully shining and all, but you don't see the behind the scenes. So just understanding that every work you have something you have to do about it. But there is work that I rather choose because I know that suits me, and that's the happier place. So that you can create that work. And, if I would just really think that professor work, that job description is actually kind of not bad. It might describe who I am, but at the end of it, the ins and out of that work, it's really not me. But I understood that. And, but then I could easily say that gives me a financial security, that comes with a benefit, comes with the, all the, like, you become tenured, then you have a lifelong, job. When I look at, unfortunately, some of the professors, they're depressed because they don't have ambition anymore. They're just like showing up, teach, and they're just like, the life is a little bit like boring. And is that a secure job? What is it? Define me what is security is. If you have some monthly paycheck and you're depressed, is that secure? So really have to think that what makes you alive. And money again will come to you when you have that intensity. I'm going to make this one happen. I guarantee there's no other person than you will deserve that paycheck. That paycheck may not come from one company. That may be 10 different sources, so you have to really like work at it, and at the end of it, you will be alive for your life.
Jeeyoon, how much have you, I'm just really curious, how much have you been to a lot of counselors, read a lot of psychologists, or gone through 12 steps? What is your how much of that do you have in your background? Because as you talk, I'm like, it's just like a bullets of these overlaps of all of these things that I've read and experienced, and but from others, right? Like teachers and things like that. And I'm just curious, I
think, being a musician, maybe, I'm dealing a lot about this solitary work, and I really have to find my way through this one-to-one, me and music. And then I actually have to deal with the public. Yeah. And the work itself really makes me very conscious person to begin with, I think. Yeah. And then being a teacher, it's like, I call it as like a piano therapy, because you can't really play piano without talking about life. And then we talk about life, and I realized I have a lot to offer. And if I have any talent, I think that's be able to connect, be able to empathize, or be able to kind of channel in. That is me, or either it's me or it's someone else. Or it's music, so what is the composer is trying to tell me, so that I'm kind of like more easily than not to maybe channel in. But from there, I seek the method, I seek for answers. And over the years, that whenever I face issues or challenges, I went to someone who is at least 30 years older than me. I never ask advice to my friends, and they felt like, you never really include me in your life. And like, no, I do. I just don't ask for advice because you're the same 30s and same 40s. You're in the same level of perspective. And so I need you, but I would not ask a particularly advice. But when I talk to someone who's 30 years older, 40 years older than me, whatever they're saying have a different perspective. And I really love that. And when I talk to the therapist, which I really recommend everybody. I met the therapist maybe 2 or 3 years of my life. Then and at the time I thought therapy is something that you have some problems, but it's not, really not. That's right. It really helps you to again get to know yourself and your tendencies and yourself, it becomes the tool that if you have some ways to get stronger, why not, right? And when I talk to this therapist, there's some things that I discover are like mind-blowing, that, oh wow, but it just suited to me, it works for me. And then everyone else has their own issues. But what I wanted to get out of those therapy sessions is that I don't want to repeat the same life challenges. If I just learn and move forward, that particular life lesson or challenges will not haunt me all the time. That's right. And I don't want to talk about when I'm 80, how my parents treated me. I don't want to be king baby. You know what I mean? That's right. Let's wake up and grow up. There is, even if it's harder though, it's a harder work when childhood is much more difficult. But I really do understand and empathize that. But there's a time that I think we all can make a decision. Past, that's a past. How can I shine through the forward? And I think that's therapy's job, is that help you to see the world, that you can move forward and gain that strength. And I didn't do a lot of 12 steps that I don't know, but I'm actually had an experience in my life that the drug addicts, and then the friends and family of drug addicts. Yep. And through that, I learned there's some pain through it, the severe pain, and so I'm very aware of, again, some of the things they talked about seems like everything that, even if I don't have a drug, issues, that I still have to exercise it anyway.
That's
You know?
no 100%. Everybody should be doing it. It's just like, well, I don't have a drinking problem. But there's actually a group, and I was so glad to find this because I love 12 steps, but I felt a little weird being like with, you know, but like it's alcoholics or narcotics or whatever it was. Cause I'm like, feels like maybe this isn't like, I don't know. It felt like it wasn't right, but it was like, it was so right though in the thing, because you're right. This just applies everywhere. And I actually found there's a group called they call it CODA. It's Codependence Anonymous. And basically what I loved about it was literally, it's like, I desire healthy relationships. So relationship with self, relationship with others. So it's, but it's the exact same 12 steps, but I didn't have to have like a chemical addiction. It's not like AA is going to check you at the door. It's like everyone's welcome for open meetings. But this one was so great. And for me, it was like, I went for years actually, because I was like, this is so healthy, such good medicine. And actually why I asked specifically about 12 steps was when you're like, people expect this, expect that, expect someone to see them, expect this thing to happen. And they have a lot of mantras in 12-step meetings. There's things they say a lot, right? And so they'll say, well, expectations are resentment under construction. Like, and I'm like, oh, that's so good. And there's so many of them, but it is like to come into something with expectation is a way to go. It like, and then we especially like not agreed upon, like I expected to see you here at 4 because we agreed on that. Right. So it's like, okay, cool. I can expect that. It's a fair expectation versus I expect this person to love me or see me or do this for me or deliver this gift or whatever. And yet that it just really stood out to me. Yeah. And actually, as you talked about the therapist, what's interesting is it maps to when I started surfing, I found a teacher. And when I was playing piano for 20 plus years, I had a teacher. And then, you know, but then and then you move to like the metacognition, whereas like, you're like, everybody should have a therapist. And at some level it is like the surfing, you can't see your own body and you're new to surfing. And by having the other present who is there to help you see yourself, they become a mirror held back up to you that has some like training in that and sees hundreds of people. So they go, oh, there's like patterns in humans that we can learn these kind of lessons. And then over time, you then now walk away with the tools that you can do it in the mirror, that you can kind of like, you become the teacher, just like you said within the piano place and things like that. And, but like the more I'm just like, your words are dripping with wisdom. Like they're just bathed in wisdom. And it's so crystal clear to me as you talk and as I read through your book, which I encourage all of you to read. This is such good medicine. And I was just so curious about that. Cause I'm like, man, you're so good at this.
I think, you know, if you seek out some solution, there's always you don't think about life as like, there's nothing impossible. There's always solution. You have to find that solution, But if you look out and look for it, there's their book might be solution. There may be one line in the book, like like speak to you just when the students is ready, mastery arrives. That's kind of thing,
That's right.
But when you just give up, like, oh, there's nothing I can do, that's a point that you close yourself. But when you're like seeking out therapist or talking to a mentor, someone who may have a different perspective, ask their help, ask for, can we talk for coffee? I'm just like, talk again. I'm recommend not to your friends, but actually someone who's much older or someone who has a different perspective, and there's one time that my mentor, who was like 30 years older than me, and he said, Jeeyoon, just avoid negativity. Just walk away. Just walk. And when at that time, like, I think I can fight for this. I can do it. Like, that's stupidity, Jeeyoon. Like, why would walk to try drugs that see if you really can be addictive? That's stupid.
That's it.
So then if you have someone is toxic to your life, remove that person. Don't talk to that person. Don't see that person. just remove that. Even if it's a parent, I don't talk to my father because I know that's toxic to me. I chose to do that, you know. So then my life is it's a more of a positive environment, you know. So it's something like that. I think that just avoiding negativity is not stupid, but actually wise. So that I think we can create our environment that is really the optimal, you know, without those toxic environment or person or whatever that negativity, life is still hard. Why drag down? You know what I mean? Yeah.
It's so good. And that, I mean, honestly, even and it is like a statement of faith to say there's always a possibility. There's always it exists. I just got to find it. Right.
Yes.
As opposed to go, there's no hope. There's no, it's like, that is the move, the closed and the open. And it at some fundamental level, it's like, it's the transition of a state of being. It's a decision that gets made, right?
It's funny.
Inside.
It's funny that one time, like 3 years ago, I got a letter from this IRS. And then like I got a letter. I got a letter and like, oh wow, what is this letter? And like they're saying they want to have an interview. And I said, oh, they want to have an interview. In my head, like at the split second was thinking some positivity. And then soon enough, then, oh no, I'm audited. I'm going to be audited. Oh my gosh, I'm going to be audited in person, you know? And I got a letter from IRS and going to be audited, you know? At that moment, this is a disaster, nightmare of all Americans that get audited in person by IRS. At that moment, I was like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? Am I going to go into jail? Not that I want to have a hide anything, but it really feels very full with fear and unknown what's going to happen. You know, there might be something that I did stupid and, you know, whatever. So I bought 5 different books about IRS audit in Amazon right away, you know, and then I read 5 books straight for that week. Every book started, first sentence was, do not worry, you're not gonna go to jail. It starts with that. Okay,
the price of the book.
good. And then every book starts somewhere along the way. I mean, after reading that 5 books about IRS audit, I feel like, oh, okay, now I actually know what to prepare. And I actually felt like, oh, I actually know what to do. And then I talked to, you know, my tax accountant and whatnot. And I went prepared and I came out just fine. But that lesson taught me also that unknown fear, it's more dangerous, you know, that. So now I actually am so glad I audited once, because now I get another letter from IRS interview, whatever audit, then it's not going to come as a fear.
Right.
More like, I know what to expect. And it's not going to be over my head somewhere like, am I ever going to be audited, or what happened if that's gone. It's just liberating for me. And in my head, you know, when I get that letter, there's one person who's my friend, is like 84 years old. And I call him like, I got a IRS letter. What should I do? Oh my gosh, what should I do? And then everyone else was like, oh my gosh, I'm sorry. What's so sorry? All my friends were like, oh my sorry. But he told me, every problem has 7 different solutions. You have to just find it. And that, just hearing that just kind of calmed me down. And like, oh yeah, that's right.
It's figure-outable. We can figure it out. Can you, so I want to kind of respect your time, and I know we're kind of coming to where we agreed, and I thank you. Like, thank you for talking to me. Thank you for writing this. Thank you for sharing it with me. I'm really excited to share your book with everybody, and I'm really grateful for you. I would love to keep up with you and stay in touch. But as we're closing here, I just want to give you some space for those listening, like places they can find you, asks you might want to make, encouragements, like whatever, like just go for it, you know, to kind of like, I mean, obviously go get her book. You can find it basically anywhere books are sold, right? It's on Amazon. You read the Audible. That was awesome to see. I love, by the way, when authors read their own
Mhm.
books. I always get irritated when it's not the author, and your voice is so nice. So it's great. But yeah, just, I want to give you some space to kind of like let people know where they can get in touch or anything you might want to ask
Mhm.
of those listening.
Yeah, I read my book, and that was also, I wanted to share the experience was very interesting because I don't know how many people would read your own book out loud. When I started to read my own words out loud, it was really feeling like I'm meeting myself. And at the end of reading whole my book through the week, at the end of that, I had a sense of loss or some sadness, as if I went through this journey, 2 years journey with a friend, and saying goodbye. I know that friend, we had a precious experience together, but it's a time to say goodbye. And it was more saying goodbye, the 41 years of Jeeyoon, and also the invisible reader that is kind of going through the journey with this book together. And, it's just bittersweet kind of thing. And it was really like interesting experience for me. And if you could read a book and listen, that you might feel that I walked through this book as if I'm your best friend, and talking about tools like that might help you. The title of the book is called Whenever You're Ready. And that comes from when I wait for the cue to go out to stage. There's always stage manager holding that door to the stage, ask me whenever you're ready. And at that moment, everything I did daily day, my life, the tools that I collected, and I gathered myself, create a courage within, and make a decision to walk that first step. And I said to myself, you are ready, you're enough. You're gonna have a great time, people are gonna love it. You're gonna just express this music as if this is your last concert. And tell this guy and smile and yes. And he opens that door and there's beautiful stage waiting for me. And I realize I'm not the one who has a stage. You have a stage called life. And this book is not about being a concert pianist, but it's about life, about fear, about the monster in your head, about, create your life, design, compose your life in the way that makes you happy, makes you more content, and makes you more alive. Because we have a limit, which is we're not going to be here forever.
Yep.
And then in that beauty of limit, I think we can really do something about it. That is finding yourself, finding your own puzzle for this universe, why you exist here. And I believe that everybody has a reason to be here, even for this small thing you did, holding that door for someone behind you, that made that person the better day. Butterfly effect. If we do, everybody do little things like that, I think we contributing to the world. And if you always think that big picture, small picture, big picture is that you are contributing to this universe to be better. Small picture is that you want to be a happy person, And so through this written journey, I feel like I'm sharing myself, my soul, inviting you to come to inside of me, inside my brain, inside my heart, so that when you have to make that first step, you are more encouraged, more motivated. And there's I construct this book like a written concert. There's 5 movements, and in between 5 movements, there is intermission. That's where I talk about piece of music that is dear to my heart. There's a QR code that directs you to go to my podcast to listen to my own performance. And I believe that classical music is medicine and gift to the humanity. And among all the tools that I presented in the book, if you can pick up maybe some beauty, some tool through classical music, then that's my mission. That's my job done well too. So, because once you read my book, that you might feel like you get to know me better. That's always the best way to experience a piece of music through your friend. If I'm your best friend and play a piece of music in my living room for you, I'm guaranteed that you're gonna get into that particular piece of music. So just take up on that opportunity that given to you. You may never had that chance to. Nobody gave you the chance to listen to classical music, but I do that, So that's my other side of me that I reach out to you through my podcast. And if you sign up at my website, jeeyoonkim.com, they can sign up for my newsletter there, where I write every other Friday, that similar to my book, but continuing journey that, so that whatever reflection that I felt during those weeks, and I share them. And maybe in that way, that if I ended up in your city, that you come to my concerts, it's like a best friend, and it's still gonna be exciting. I think there's reason there are people call me as a gateway drug to classical music, and there's no judgmental. You don't have to know about classical music, but just give yourself a chance to get to know. And I'm one of those people that it can be easily found on the internet, social media, Instagram, whatever the way. I try to open that door channel. It doesn't mean I always like pop out my YouTube videos every week, kind of like that, but I do my best when I keeping my work and rest balance, keeping my mission, who I am, and I continuously try to open that window to you, so you can come in and I can visit you. So those are available whichever way you choose. So then, hopefully that, for me, I never wrote anything to the authors that I admire. I never did. I never do. People don't. So it's quite after I wrote this book, I know that not every reader is going to write me back. And telling me how amazing this book is for them, or whatever that they felt. They will not gonna necessarily write me, but I hope that whatever that from that book made you think again. And if you came to my concert, maybe there's a minute or second that made you feel like your heart is ripple, if that's a pond, that's my goal. And you don't have to necessarily reach out to me and wrote me back. If you do, I really greatly appreciate it. But just know that there's someone else out there figuring out life, but still it's on to you. Do the work, do whatever it needs to be done. But there's the tools out there whenever you're ready.
I'm so grateful for you. I want to, for those listening, there's one other piece. She references some tools in the book, and each kind of chapter has at the end of it it almost has like a little baked in workbook. It gives like exercises to kind of apply the lessons as well. And I just want to echo that line she just said as she was closing, that is, do the work. And I, just encourage all you guys. And I actually would just encourage you to write her after listening to this, because I think even this conversation itself, I can't wait to share it, because I know it'll have ripples. It'll have ripples, and hopefully one of those ripples is some book sales. But hopefully some of those ripples are also just that butterfly effect in people's lives of just courage and creativity and fun and meaning. And Jeeyoon, thank you so much for spending this time. I look forward to connecting again. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so much.
All right, talk to you soon. Bye.